Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Lessons Learned, the dumbest thing I've ever done with money. My name is Suzanne, and I'm the head coach at G.R.A.C.E Financial Coaching. I help the financially stuck master their income without dismantling their lifestyle. And today we're going to be talking to Ryan Derousseau. He specializes in working with therapists, private and group practitioners, and the self-employed. I know a lot of you out there listening are self-employed. He wants to help them thrive financially so that they can focus more on their clients. My goodness, haven't we all felt that before? Ryan, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I love the name of the podcast. It's so apt for for having me on. So this
It's
is
so
great.
apt for financial professionals, right? Because
Absolutely.
you and me know that we've all met that financial advisor out there, or that financial coach, or that insurance professional who has never done anything wrong, right? That's the
Oh no.
air that they give off,
Yeah.
but we've all done it, right?
Oh yeah.
Most of us are in this business because we did do wrong.
Yeah. I actually, when I tell people sort of how to pick out a financial advisor, one thing I say, if they are coming to you and they're only talking about their like lavish cars or their fancy vacations, it probably means you're funding that lavish car and that vacation, and probably not for good reasons.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you can't have someone you can talk to about this stuff, then you've got the wrong person.
Yeah, and I don't begrudge anybody making money, right?
Oh
But
no,
if
not at all.
if
Yeah.
the only thing you're talking about is the car that you have now, if you're not starting that story with, "Oh my gosh, you should have seen the thing I drove when I first started.
Yeah.
It barely ran," or the transmission fell out of it on the highway, or if that's not the opening to the story, then maybe we shouldn't be leading with that story.
Absolutely, absolutely. Like I always joke, I drive a minivan. I don't care about cars, but I have clients who do, and so if they want that fancy car or whatever, like I want to help them get to it. I just don't need that to be the only thing we're focused on, or the only thing they're gaining from our conversations and
Yeah.
whatnot.
It's everyone has different goals, right?
Yeah.
So talk to us about exactly what you do, your industry, and how you help people get there.
Yeah, so I work for a group called United Financial Planning Group. That kind of I operate as a self-employed person as well, so I like know sort of the struggle and the things that we have to deal with on a month to month, week to week basis. But that's for like compliance purposes. And then what I did was I used to be a journalist, and I
Hmm.
used to actually cover financial advisors. It was like one of my first jobs was covering financial advisors, and I kind of learned what made for a good advisor and what made for a not so good advisor for the individual. And eventually, when I decided I wanted to work one on one with people, I took those lessons and kind of do what I do today. But when I was a writer, I always worked for myself as well. So I've worked for myself for about 10, 12 years. And so I wanted to work directly with the self-employed. A group that I've really engaged with, become really well versed in, is a therapist, private practice owners, because the group as a whole, so many of them work in private practice. So many have not had the education and opportunity to learn this stuff. And so I'm able to kind of bridge that gap and help them with that.
Yeah, isn't it so funny how marriage, we'll just use like LMFTs, like licensed marriage and family therapists, right?
Mhm.
They're not going to school for 2 years, right?
Mhm.
They're not going to medical school in the sense of, becoming a brain surgeon, but they're in school for a long time. And how many, I mean, every industry we could chalk this up to, that this stuff doesn't get taught. Financial literacy, knowing what the next steps are, knowing how to achieve your long-term goals isn't taught. But one would hope, if you're spending that much time in college and in getting your master's and any additional degrees from that point forward, and certifications, and each state has a different requirement,
Mhm.
man, you would think this would come across some people's desks at some point, and it really doesn't anymore.
Yeah, one of my favorite questions to ask anyone is just sort of like what financial education you've had,
Huh.
which is always like, zero to none.
Yeah.
But what I think is really telling is, like in the therapy space, for example, a large percentage of them end up working for themselves, which means they end up owning a business. And yet, in all that schooling that you're talking about, there's never a class about sort of how to run a business. What is an LLC, what is an S corp, are the things that you have to think about, and as the business owner, as opposed to the therapist, because you have to kind of separate yourself. You're almost two different people when you're running that practice.
Yeah, I find that with being a financial coach and working for myself as well too. The self-employed life. I know who it was. It was a gentleman who used to be my assistant back when I was still in commercial real estate management. And he followed up with me, I would say like a year, 2 years after I left commercial real estate. And he said, how great is it? I think this is how he phrased the question. Found me on LinkedIn again. Hey, what's going on? How great is it working for yourself? And I responded with, this is the hardest job I've ever had. And at that point, I was not making what I had been making in commercial real estate. I had not caught up to that level yet. And I was like, yeah, because I'm doing everything.
Yeah.
I am the marketing team. I'm the IT department. I am an awful IT department. Like you're doing everything. You're not just meeting with clients. You're not just helping people through potentially some of the hardest times of their life as a therapist. You are doing everything. You are every department. And no, I don't think they make licensed marriage and family therapists and the like take entrepreneurship 101 in their final year of schooling. Perhaps they should. I would say more and more, I've worked with many therapists and counselors over the years. I think all of them are in private practice now.
Yeah.
There were a few I was working with who were still in group practice or under another umbrella. And I think I should say, maybe everyone's not. Everyone's goal was to be in private practice.
Yeah. And it's pretty common, unless you're working for a hospital and the pay is pretty decent, eventually you think about going private practice because of the way salaries work and fees work and sessions work. And you can start charging a lot more potentially if you're out on your own. And so that's why that occurs. And what you were describing and sort of like doing everything, like one thing I have to talk to people about eventually is because you're also your own CFO. And what happens is if you don't know what is going on and things are kind of, like not in place, you need to fire that CFO, which means like you need to find like the financial guidance that can actually help you like navigate this and move your practice forward.
One of the first things I do when I have somebody who's self-employed or, potentially, like you said, perhaps I don't want to say they're moonlighting, but doing maybe per diem work at a hospital or in a medical center or stuff like that. Rad techs, sonographers, like a lot of these are per diem positions and these people aren't necessarily full-time at any particular place. One of the first things I do is I'm like, you need to get an accountant. You need to get an accountant because if we're doing something wrong, we're going to wake up on April 15th next year. And if you haven't been properly estimating quarterly taxes, if you didn't understand what it meant to have a 1099 versus a W-2, we could have some serious issues. So yeah, you've got to, I think if you know you're a bad CFO, there are steps you can take, such as speaking to somebody like yourself and bringing in other experts to avoid the pitfalls of the bad CFO who you may be.
Yeah, no, it's fair. Like the way I kind of put it is like the difference between a financial advisor and a financial or a CPA or an accountant is the CPA and accountant's looking in the back window in a car because they're looking backwards and figuring out sort of what you owe at the end of the year. A financial planner or advisor is looking at the forward window. So they're looking at what's ahead and trying to help you navigate that. And that's really the difference. Because one thing that I would say is a rite of passage, honestly, in self-employment is the first time you have real growth in your income. Because what happens is you think you're doing great, and then that first tax bill comes around, and
I remember distinctly.
Oh my gosh, yes,
Yep.
Yeah, it is a crippling sort of experience, but that's tends to be sort of the initiative that self-employed people have or need, the push that they need to get sort of advice because they realize, oh, something's going on and I don't understand why this is happening.
Yeah. I distinctly remember doing the what the kids would say, the also me meme. Me, yay, I had my best quarter ever. Also me. Oh my God, look how much I owe in taxes.
Yeah. I had a very new client, so I hadn't really worked with her yet, and she also wanted to do taxes through the firm. And so one of the first conversations I had to have with her is like, oh, hey, by the way, you owe $26,000 in taxes. how are we going to afford that? And like that's a shock to the system. And she had done a good job of saving money, but then like this like takes all of that away again. And that's what we want to avoid ideally. But honestly, it's so common in the self-employment space. I've experienced it myself. And yeah, I mean, it's been a long time, but
Yeah.
I still remember the like aftershocks of that.
Oh, absolutely. Definitely. Now, what made you get into was it just reporting on the other financial advisors and things like that that got you interested in the field coming from a place of journalism?
So because I was in journalism and I because like I said, like in school, I learned how to write a check and trade a stock. Like I don't do either of those things really to this day. And so I didn't learn this stuff either. What happened was I just happened in my journalism field or career to navigate towards like personal finance and investing. So I worked for publications like Fortune and Money, and got the opportunity and learned these things through talking to financial planners and investors and stuff like that. And so it got to the point though where it became really repetitive, really wasn't growing, and I just wanted something new. And so I thought about sort of the skills I have. Well, I have this education. Okay, can I get certified? Can I actually help people one-on-one? And so I went through that process to kind of legitimize it for myself. But I almost went. You're a financial coach. I almost went the financial coaching route. Other than I just didn't know how to navigate the world of financial coaching without the CFP, and so that's just why I ended up going that route.
Right. No, that's great. Yeah. I mean, we both serve a purpose.
Yeah.
I literally just came from a networking event not about a couple hours ago, and the person who gravitated towards me was the financial advisor.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And it really is. I think people do have a misunderstanding, but the coaching piece comes in when someone goes to a financial planner or a financial advisor, and they have a goal, but they just have no idea how to even remotely start to get to it. And so, Ryan, I really need to start maxing out my Roth IRA. I need to start a Roth IRA.
Or
I gotta roll over this 401k from my last hospital job. And then I don't even know what to do next. And sometimes that stuff's easy, right? Oh, okay. Well, here's how we do a rollover. Here's how we start a Roth IRA. A lot of the stuff that's difficult is the behavioral changes.
Yeah.
I want to contribute. I want to max out my Roth IRA. Okay. Well, it's 6,500 this year in the bracket that you're in, the age bracket that you're in. And if we divide that by 12 months, you're going to have to start putting this much aside. Well, I don't have that much money to put aside, and so we need to find, that's why I love working with financial advisors and financial planners, because we can find that there's like sometimes there's a piece of water that we have to jump over, or we have to build a bridge between how do we get to a place where Ryan is saying, hey, you can make all these things happen, right? Yeah. You can have this type of retirement. You can retire earlier than you thought, but we need to get to a place where we're starting to do A, B, C, and X, Y, and Z. And the behavioral changes, especially from working with therapists and counselors, right? The behavioral changes is where it's at.
I mean, as a planner and an advisor, like that's the area I want to be, like so much of like what I do is I have to end up being what you're talking about at the beginning part, teaching them how to budget and guiding them on that process. But that is not where I would like to spend most of my time. Like I want more complex stuff because, it's like more interesting and intellectually and stimulating for me as a planner. But I also recognize that people are coming at this at different stages in their life. And so we have to sort of determine, where we are. Like it's shocking how much, like what you described, like how much like financial planning has turned into somewhat, there is a financial coaching component to it because of that. And sure, if I, had enough business and I could just say, hey, financial coach, like, please take it, help me. That would be ideal eventually.
Yeah. I think we didn't always have that gap because this stuff was taught in schools years ago. Some of this used to be taught in home ec. That's where my parents learned it. Yeah. And if your school still had home ec, we did have home ec, but we didn't learn any of this.
Yeah.
Only the kids who took the one business class, and I went to a relatively small high school in New York, but only the kids who took the one business class were exposed to anything beyond writing a check.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. There was no online banking, right? We're old enough that we didn't have online banking back in the day, maybe not till college or even after that. And we didn't have this financial literacy gap. People knew how to budget, or they watched their mother balance the checkbook every Saturday afternoon, or whatever more is caught than taught.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a financial guru says that all the time. We were exposed to our parents and their behaviors. And now with the advent of online banking, I have a couple of clients will come to me and be like, I don't know how to reconcile my checking. I'm like, you don't really have to anymore.
No, you don't.
That's what online banking.
I told my mom that years ago, that you don't actually have to do that.
Well, I mean, hey, it's a habit for some of us.
It is.
But you did comment at the beginning, Ryan, that you like the title of the show. And so I have to ask you the question.
Yeah.
What would you say is the dumbest thing you've ever done with money up until this point?
Yeah, because while I love the title of the show, I always caveat sort of, because I get a lot of people coming in with a lot of shame around finances. And so I'm going to say, like, minimize that, because we're not taught this. So it's like, you shouldn't be ashamed by certain things, or, getting deep into debt or whatever, because like we haven't been given the skills to do it. And so if someone's listening and like they have that, like, recognize we all have had dumb things. The variance of dumb things is going to be range as wide as the financial system is. In terms of my dumbest things, like, a lot of it had to do with when I was starting out in self-employment, and particularly that tax component, because I just kind of relied on like a CPA or accountant to manage it, never looking into things myself. And so I would just assume that that what they were doing was correct. And then and so what happened was, like, 2016 tax laws changed.
Yes.
And there were two like big deductions, particularly what's called a qualified business income deduction, which for self-employed folks, if you're in the service industry, is basically a 20% deduction of your income, essentially. And so it's huge. Like, that's a huge number, because with the self-employment taxes that we have to pay, it's like burdensome. And I didn't know about this for about 3 years. And then I randomly was writing a story where it mentioned it. I looked into it, and it could have saved me like $15,000 a year or something like that. And I go back to the person, and they're like, "Oh, well, we didn't know you qualified for that." And I'm like, "Isn't that your job?" And so I never worked with them again. But
this was a bookkeeper or like a tax planning,
probably. I don't think she was a CPA, but she was like either an EA or someone who could fill out the thing. And devastated. That like was really hurtful when I found that out, because then it made me realize, hey, I needed to like take ownership of this thing. And then I'll tell one other quick story. One of the first money moves that I was participating with my wife on was connecting with a financial planner that had worked with her father for many years, father and mother.
And I will say that happens a lot. It's like a legacy type thing. Oh, you're going to go to talk to mom and dad's money person now, or you're going to go talk to dad's money person. And that person ends up generationally working with families. If the practice is passed down to a kid, I've had that as well too. And so it just keeps going and going and going. So yeah, that's definitely pretty common.
It is. This was before I covered financial advisors, and what I didn't understand was the difference between what like a fee-only advisor was and like a commission-based advisor. And this guy happened to be a commission-based advisor, and we would be going out to breakfast with him, and he'd be paying, and we'd be like, "How is this guy making any money? Like, I don't understand this." And then it wasn't until I started covering financial advisors that I realized he was probably getting paid by commission. And so I looked at what he was doing with my then wife's accounts, realized that he had her in some weird fund that wasn't doing anything, wasn't really exposed to the market, but it was giving him like a 3% load fee, like every time she added money into it. And so he was taking money out from gaining from it. We were not. And so I not only got us out of that, I then moved my father-in-law to actually the group that I work at now. And when I
Wow.
became a financial advisor, they were like one of my first calls, and it ended up being something where we decided to have this relationship.
Oh, that is really, it's both of your stories. One of them, the first part where the person that was doing your taxes didn't realize you qualified, right? Like,
Mhm.
man, that sucks. Like, right, we're talking about 15, 30, potentially $45,000
Yeah.
down the drain, cannot be recovered.
And I was a writer then, so like that's
Oh my
that's a
God,
good
I
amount of
know.
money, like I needed that money.
Oh, right. That would have been 15 years worth of raises, right? Like, yeah, writers and do not make a lot.
Yeah,
The They can almost kind of be forgiven for being ignorant of it, right? But then when you have the other side of the coin with the commission, purposefully putting money into something where their clients aren't making money.
yeah,
I mean, it's just crazy. I remember there was a guy going around our neighborhood when I was growing up on Long Island, and everyone was signing up for annuities. Everyone was signing up for annuities. And my dad was like, "This doesn't make sense." And I remember I was young enough to like not really understand why it didn't make sense. I wasn't, if I was 14, I wasn't running around with the definition of an annuity on the tip of my tongue.
sure, of course.
But I just remember him being like, "This doesn't make sense." And he finally laid it out to me one day, like, the only person that was making money off of this annuity, I'm going to call it an annuity scheme at the time, was the guy who was selling the annuities.
Yeah,
No
yeah,
one in the neighborhood was making any money off of it. I don't even know if they were bringing in the increase in the regular cost of living at the time. This would have been in the late 90s probably.
hmm
And it was just so I can almost I have more forgiveness for the people who didn't realize you qualified for the tax deduction than I do for the person who's not looking out for their clients.
yeah.
Which kind of
So
explains why you work with a lot of therapists and counselors, because they're client centric.
they are. I have a therapy journey myself. Like I wouldn't be doing what I do right now without therapists, a specific therapist actually. And so like I credit him for what I do now and really appreciate it. Plus, I just naturally connect with really anyone in self-employment, but also therapists more specifically. And so there's a little bit of that. You know, and it also leads back to what I was talking about, that sort of shame aspect of it, because is so much sort of shame. I am someone who really wants people looking forward, like not looking back in terms of like what went wrong or where the gap is between where we think we should be and where we are right now, but instead kind of, if we're going to look back, see how much we've actually gained over the years,
Mhm.
and then sort of figure out a plan for, continuing to grow the way we would like to grow, as opposed to the way, like, I don't know, society or friends or whatever say to grow.
Yeah, a lot of what I do, I jokingly but really seriously do call it financial therapy,
Yeah.
because sometimes there are mistakes, or fear of mistakes that haven't even happened yet.
Yeah.
We're so afraid that something's going to go wrong because of XYZ, that we would rather. I actually have somebody right now who has a credit card that's gone into collections because they're too afraid to take their money out of savings that could pay off the entire card
Oh,
and get
wow.
it out of collections.
hmm
And it's debilitating.
Yeah.
It's
And
really debilitating in certain
what
circumstances.
what's striking is that doesn't change with income or
Yeah.
net
Oh,
worth,
yeah.
because I have a very wealthy client who's buying a house, and for the size of her assets to the house, like, just pay the cash and it's not going to be a big deal whatsoever. And I mean, we've had to go through many, many different iterations of the plan just to like show her that, like, no matter what you're doing, I mean, you might be losing $500 here or $1,000 here, but like you're very wealthy and you're going to cover it, and it's going to like reduce your stress and like all that sort of thing. But it doesn't change just because you have like a big bank account or anything like that.
Yeah. A lot of people think, oh, all of my problems would be gone if this debt was gone, or if I paid cash for a house or whatever. And if you're still in that mindset that's preventing you from moving forward, and you seem like the type of person that has the vision characteristic, so you can see the big picture, you can see down the road. People who don't have that vision ability, it can be really scary to do something that they're looking at as a risk, but you're looking at it like this is the smart move, but to them it's a risk and it's scary. And so, there's a lot of financial therapy that goes on during my sessions for sure.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes I actually do like refer out to like financial therapists because as well.
There's been I would say probably a handful of times in my 5.5, 6 years where I have actually turned clients down and said, I need you to go to therapy. I need you to go to marriage counseling. Well, let me rephrase that. I don't need you to go. You need to go. And if you're going to work with me, I'm going to need to know that you guys are working on this part, because, the money stuff isn't going to get solved, especially in a marriage situation, if we have some underlying things that need to be addressed. So I would say a handful of times I've turned away potential clients and said, I really would rather you guys work on your relationship, your mental health, the things that are holding you back, and then we can step into the financial side of things.
Yeah, I actually have someone I'm working with who they came to me because they were having some like figuring out how much they can spend and whatnot, and I was like, look, you're saying that you're overspending and whatnot. Meanwhile, your husband or ex-husband has basically kicked you out of the house, left you with your only child, with no recourse to like manage that. Some of this spending that you're worried about is actually just like stress. And I really so I can teach you kind of the basics of budgeting, but you really, I think, need to talk to someone. And so because I have like a network of therapists, I was able to connect her with one, because like it wouldn't have mattered, the budgeting techniques. It just wouldn't have mattered, because like what she's dealing with is so much bigger than just finances. She's dealing with like life concerns, and finances is just an outlet for that.
Yeah.
But I'm not skilled or experienced or qualified to like help with that part of her life,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, we'll leave the mental health stuff to the professionals, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Speaking of professionals, though, you guys have an ebook that I wanted you to talk about a little bit.
Yeah. So I work with United Financial. They're kind of like how I get my compliance stuff done, but I market through what's called Thinking Cap Financial. And I created an ebook about sort of how you can turn either solo income or private practice income into wealth, because what I find a lot in those folks, particularly the service-based self-employed folks, is they get really excited that first year. They're on their own, they're building. Second year, they're finally seeing an income, and that's like really exciting. By the third year, they are exhausted and they can't take a break, and they can't figure out why. And it's because they have this income and they've created an income stream, but they have not created wealth with that income. And so the ebook is really about sort of how to turn that income stream or income into wealth. And really, there's 3 ways in America. You invest in the markets, you invest in business or businesses, and real estate. And so that's what the ebook is really delving into. And I'll pass along the link so you can put it in the show notes.
Yes. Yep, absolutely. Yep, I already have it. I've already pulled it up myself and taken a look at it. And so it will definitely be in the show notes for our listeners and our viewers today, definitely. Well, Ryan, I have one final question. If you could go back in time, what would you change about your 2 dumbest lessons that you've learned?
Well, I would, I can't change the past, so I'm not going to really change it. But if I could have like understood what a financial planner was or how they got paid, that would be wonderful. And then 2, just take ownership. Like I know with a lack of knowledge and a lack of time, we want to like kind of pass on some of this stuff. And we need proper guidance, but we also have to like understand why it's happening, or our purpose or our, what we are supposed to handle in the situation. And so by taking ownership, we can really take a hold of our finances as well.
Absolutely. And if taking ownership means hiring someone who knows more than you do, then let it be that, right? We don't have to learn everything. We've got experts out there who can help, but we should know enough to help ourselves. Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Love it, Ryan. Thank you so much for your time today. All of Ryan's contact information, like I said, will be in the show notes, including the link to the ebook. Like I said, I already looked at it, checked it out. I strongly suggest it for my fellow self-employed people out there who I know are our weekly listeners. So Ryan, thanks again for joining us. Have a great